Right now, one of the most important things that everyone who owns XRP is talking about is how we have to wait 60 days before we hear something big in the SEC versus Ripple case. What if I told you that this case might be dropped at any time? I think that time will come very soon, really a lot faster than 60 days. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why, relax, and take it easy. All of you are welcome to the group. My name is Nick. For people who are new to the channel, we'll be at the end of this movie. In fact, you do sign up. Okay, let's talk about this for a while. We did get the big news on the 16th. Of course, it wasn't what we were expecting, and it wasn't that happy. It was the fact that, a joint move was approved. Because they both asked for the appeal to be put on hold, the SEC has to make a status report within 60 days, which the SEC governor has been given and is told to file a progress report within 60 days. In a way, it's like a wait. I do think, though, that this case will be over sooner than 60 days. And the reason I say that is, of course, Paul Atkins. So the big news in the last 24 to 48 hours is that Paul Atkins was sworn in as chairman of the SEC and has now fully begun his job. Now, if the mood around you is anything like mine, then you're now pro-crypto. Things are going to change. We're going to start to make sure that crypto stays alive in the US. We want to make sure that new ideas keep growing. Since we all mean what we say, the SEC should start to completely change their focus from now on. There are some quotes here now from Paul Atkins. First, he's grateful that President Trump and the Senate have put their trust in him to lead the SEC. When he does return to the SEC, I'll be happy to work with him and my fellow commissioners to further the agency's mission to protect investors, encourage capital formation, and keep markets fair, orderly, and efficient. We will all work together to make the US the safest and best place in the world to do business and trade. Now let's see what happens. But we do know that Brad Garlinghouse from December, because that's when we learned that Trump had picked Paul Atkins to be chair of the SEC. Brad Garlinghouse did say that it was a great pick, and that Chester Pierce, Mark Ueda, and Paul Atkins will bring common sense back to the SEC as they lead it. It's time to quickly and permanently end the age of crypto prohibition. This will restore choice, economic growth, and new ideas. We also know that this is what Paul Atkins said about the Ripple case. Thanks to XRP for this, and pay close attention to this. It seems like people are hitting a brick wall at the SEC. A lot of things depend on the case against Ripple. That's a really cool thing to keep an eye on in this space. That's the main thing. That's the main one, right? There you have it. The Ripple case is likely one of the most important, if not the most important. We have some secret cases in front of us. Why is it taking so long for this case to be dropped, or for the deal to be fully publicized? It's because this case has been through so much. It was one of the first cases that the SEC brought into this space. But we already know that a deal has been made. All we need is for things to be settled. It looks like they want to keep us there for as long as possible. Now that Paul Atkins is in charge, let's hope. It would be great if the pause period of 60 days was thrown out when we start to see a big move here. I wouldn't rule out the possibility that this case will be over by, say, the end of May. I think May is a great month to look forward to because stablecoin laws are changing a lot, which is good for Ripple. I believe what I've been saying on this show, and a lot of it makes sense because I go all the way back to 2023, when we learned that XRP was not a security. A lot of big changes happened, like Ripple joining the BIS, like other big purchases. Ripple was built as part of these. They were also a part of big proofs of concept, and they all agreed that XRP was not a guarantee. As I said before, steady coins are becoming more popular thanks to laws that support them and other factors. This case should be handled by the NMA because it is in line with stablecoin laws. That's my best guess, but we'll see what happens. Besides that, we also have this report from Subjective Views which says that Paul Atkins is now the chair of the SEC. Several rule books for the DTCC, the CME, and even the IC were passed right away by his full attention. Cost-effective clearing, as well as changes to how clearing in custody works. Look at this. As you know, the SEC is going to get new leaders this week. The new chair will take over problems like the clearing rule that have big effects on the swaps market. What are the important questions that need to be answered right away by the chairman so that the business can fully implement the rule by the next year's deadlines? I have a nice question for you. Thanks, Chairman. So we're pretty sure that Mr. Atkins will be able to get right to work as an SEC commissioner, having already done this before, and co-workers around him to help him. This rule is very important to the SEC, and they will and should be able to fix it right away and in a fair way. A few changes to the SEC are things we think should be made. There are some problems with the rules for affiliates and with the financial rules that need to be fixed before this can really work. There's more in my testimony that could explain that, but we need them as a partner in the implementation to make sure they sign off on the different rule books for the DTCC, and ICE, which are the rival clearing houses. They need to make sure that the rest of the rules are in place to make clearing easier and more likely to happen. So far they've been great. The point of all of this is to keep markets deep and open. As well as making sure that cost-effective clearing is delivered, we need to make sure that cross-product netting solutions and operating changes are put in place. On the industry side, we are working with them to make sure we have the right schedules to make the operational changes needed to add clearing in custody and the legal agreements to back up the different clearing systems that will be offered. Once more, we could see some pretty big changes here. It's also interesting that the person talking, Scott O'Malley, is the CEO of the ISDA. What does that have to do with anything? We already know that Ripple is a part of the ISDA, so that's why. When did they join the ISDA? I think it was in 2023, if I remember correctly. I think it's very interesting that the DTCC, the CME, and even the ICE are starting to get some pretty big changes. By the way, this is all about derivatives and securities. We know that these markets are going through big changes. We know that everything on chain is flooded. We already know that everything is going online. I think this is going to start to get a lot of attention and lead to big changes in laws and rules. I do believe that with Paul Atkins in charge and his support for crypto, if it is serious, and if we are beginning to see a real shift here, which it looks like we are, because look at what we've seen in this space over the last few months. Ripple has been making huge steps forward. There is a very clear sign that the place has changed. Second, there are a lot of great companies in this space, including big exchanges and maybe even major stablecoin issuers. Do you know what they did? They've been trying to get licenses. They've also been moving around a lot. In the US, they've been getting accepted. Besides that, we all know that stablecoins are now getting a lot of attention. Laws about stablecoins are beginning to move forward. As we can see, the OCC, the FDIC, and Congress are all pushing hard for banks to accept crypto, use crypto, and even provide crypto services. In other words, it looks like we're taking this change very seriously, and I think that with Paul Atkins on board, a lot of doors will open. People have been waiting a long time for the key to finally open those doors. I think it will happen soon. I also believe that crypto and DLT are about to take over some of these big markets. The futures market is what we're talking about. We're going to talk about the FX market. Guys who are big players have already told us what they want to do. Tokenize everything. They want to use DLT and blockchain, and they want to make it all automatic.